so I'm Yuliya Snihur. I'm an Associate Professor at IESE Business School in Barcelona. I am working at the intersection of entrepreneurship and innovation, in particular in the area of new business models, and looking at how entrepreneurs build something from nothing, taking often the perspective of entrepreneurial framing, the topic of my talk here today, to understand how entrepreneurs can appeal to different audiences by explaining what they do. So looking at innovative settings has been part of the last 10 years of my research. And in the last years, I have also started to look at dark side of this innovation and entrepreneurial framing. So these are some of the main lines of my work. Yeah, so I worked for a startup before going into the PhD process, and I wanted to understand more how startups survive or don't after that experience. So I got interested in innovation, in strategy, in entrepreneurship during the PhD. I also was a fan of Schumpeter and disruptive innovation theories during that time, which led me to this questioning around new business models, how entrepreneurs introduce novelty and how they explain it to others. So I think intellectually it has been interesting to look at industry dynamics also. When I was doing my PhD, this was the post-match of dot-com boom and bust, and so there were a lot of new business models that came out from Amazon, from Google, from Netflix during that time. And so looking at these new business models, how they develop, how entrepreneurs explain them to others has been interesting then, and it is still interesting today. I think we're seeing new different business models today emerging with AI, for instance. And so I'm still interested to study the dynamics of the process. So there has been research on entrepreneurial framing during the last 10-15 years that has become pretty interesting, particularly with the emergence of crowdfunding and a lot of data that became available there. And we have learned a lot about what entrepreneurs say, how they explain what they're doing from the cognitive side. But the emotional aspect has not been researched that much yet, but there is work suggesting that emotional as well as cognitive aspects of framing matter. And that led me to look at more carefully at emotions. And I think this is very interesting to study, particularly on social media, where emotions are very, very present. And so this aspect of emotional energizing is something that I look at in this paper in particular, where the entrepreneurial framing spreads in the ecosystem of followers, but also traditional media that pick up on what is going on in the social media. The role of emotions, well, this is very much work in progress, but we see both positive and negative emotions. And the role of entrepreneurial framing is a little bit to regulate the two, to balance or to offset the negative emotions with the positive ones. And that role, I think, is important to align the ecosystem around what the message is from the entrepreneur. So this role of emotions first as an appeal to action, but also important crafting role of the entrepreneur to manage those emotions so that they are generative or productive in the ecosystem, I think is super interesting, but we don't know that much about it. So that's a little bit the backstory of what I'm trying to study in this paper. Yeah, so as I was saying, there are several papers on framing. We're starting to learn what kind of frames matter. But I think we know less about different trade-offs of, for example, I frame something as radically novel versus I trade off people not understanding what it is. So trade-off between novelty and familiarity. Trade-off between social impact versus economic impact. So more understanding of trade-offs in different types of frames is something that I would like to see more research on. The other part is framing to different audiences. And I think this is another very interesting, not so well understood part where entrepreneurs, company leaders typically face audiences with different interests, different emphasis, and how to attract these different audiences with one type of framing is not straightforward. So the heterogeneity of audiences and how to address those audiences is another, for me, very interesting topic in this framing research, particularly when entrepreneurs have to talk to investors, they have to talk to customers, they have to talk to partners. Then what is the message, how to adjust that message, is it the same message? I don't think we know enough about these trade-offs. So typically framing is treated as there is one frame and it's effective or not effective. But that's a little bit of a simplification of reality. The dark side, this is something else where I'm also very interested in terms of entrepreneurs sometimes overclaiming what they can do. And this is, again, related to questions around disruptive innovation, where we have seen in the past, we continue to see entrepreneurs promising very strong, interesting, delightful future, and sometimes not being able to deliver on that. So what entrepreneurs say early on might have a strong influence on audience expectations, but also can drive the process of deceiving the audiences because we cannot deliver on these promises quickly enough or in the same way as we explained before. Leading to these issues of deception around prototype not working, deception around first customers or partners that are not really on board, that can lead to even bigger deceptions later. So that's so trade-offs, dark side, heterogeneity of audiences are some of the interesting research directions I think in this space. And finally, with the role of AI, I think we have access to much more data today that can be analyzed in more interesting ways than ever, basically. And this is also, I think, this methodological advances through the use of machine learning, computation based on large data sets can help to look at these questions differently or with more granularity than we did before, which is also very exciting for future work in this space. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, this paper was an editorial in Journal of Management Studies, which was based on looking at the past, and we realized that there is still big gaps in terms of context where people do research, at least what is published. And it's more of a call for more non-Western contexts being used and learning from them in research. So the cultural and regional diversity, again, in my topic of framing, well, we know pretty well how to frame in US or Western Europe, but what framing should look like in Indian context or in Chinese context is not so clearly understood right now. So there's a lot to be gained from looking at other contexts than the classic ones. And I think in journals we are starting to see more and more diversity of contexts, but it's still not enough versus what could be done, what we could expect. Also with the internationalization of business schools. I mean, today there are business schools in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, in US, and so seeing more diversity in terms of contexts would be something for the next 20 years, let's say, that would be very good, I think, for both the journals, the theories in management, but also for the scholars who are in these different business schools and can do research in these contexts where they are embedded. Yes, so I'm particularly involved with several special issues, and so we have this special issue on entrepreneurial framing in strategic entrepreneurship journal that is upcoming, and I hope through that to learn more about framing of innovation, of novelty. I'm also editing a special issue on hype and the role of hype in entrepreneurship. I think that's another interesting topic that, surprisingly enough, has not been researched by entrepreneurship scholars that much. So we know about bubbles from economists, for example, but how hype drives entrepreneurship with what impact is much less understood. And so I'm excited about those intersections of framing hype as well as, well, social impact. So this is the paper I will be talking about today, where there is this social impact framing seems to have more traction today than it did 10, 15, 20 years ago, because consumers are looking for social impact. Entrepreneurs are motivated to create initiatives such as social entrepreneurship initiatives. So I think understanding better how this social impact framing influences consumers helps or doesn't for businesses to move forward, to address some of the grand challenges we still have left on the table is, from my side, is very interesting. And I have projects in this space, let's say, that I already talked about. So the entrepreneurial framing around social impact, entrepreneurial framing to different heterogeneous audiences are some of the places where I think new things will be coming out in the next couple of years. Well, I don't have enough perspective, I guess, yet to say which paper is underappreciated. I think it's a market for ideas, and people pick up what they like. So for me, it's very hard to predict what paper will be successful or not successful. I like them all; they're all my children. So, I mean, I'm excited about this paper on the dark side of entrepreneurial framing that we got published recently in AMR, because I think it starts a little bit of a new conversation on over-promising or overselling that we haven't really had in entrepreneurship. I can't really say if it's underappreciated, but to me it's an exciting area to think about, this thin line between envisioning the future, telling others about the future, and not lying about it. And it's not obvious at which point your future promises become unrealistic. So it's an interesting area, at least to me, to think about. When you're an entrepreneur, you show your prototype to the audience and you say, I'm sure it will work, or you say, it is working, and maybe there is a small glitch. How to frame the future ethically is not an obvious place to find answers. So I think this is, at least to me intellectually, this is interesting to consider in terms of promises, particularly big promises about the future that entrepreneurs make. But on the other side, you can argue that you cannot do something or create something from nothing without making these big promises. So this thin line between envisioning the future and telling the truth is an interesting place for me. But again, maybe I'm just by myself in this camp of thinking this is interesting. So market will tell. So 3 points. First of all, I think the learning the ropes is very, very important. So it's very much a profession of craftsman or artisan, where the learning curve is long. I was at least surprised, or I didn't expect to be learning for so long how the system works. And so it's not a matter of 1, 2, 3, 4 months. It's a matter of years to understand why there are the norms there are, how publishing works, what is expected. So having understanding well the system in which you're working, the professional expectations, I think is the base, and probably 4 or 5 years is the minimum to get there. That's the first point. Second point, well, I think cultivating yourself is also important, because you have to have something of relevance to say to others. and the world changes as well. So you have to be aware what is happening in the world and consider it carefully, what you can add to the conversation going on. So being relevant, it's not an easy task, let's say. How to be relevant through your PhD, through your papers, through the conversation you have with students. That's the value of the academic, of the intellectual. And asking this question, how do I cultivate myself to be relevant, I think is important. I'm not sure I have a perfect answer how to do that, but I think improving yourself to have something to say to others is important. And the third point, well, I think you should also enjoy the process. If you don't like what you're doing and spending years in front of these papers and thinking about what's going on, yeah, it's a difficult profession also. So enjoying the process of learning, of discovery, of these small steps is important. So understanding, do I really enjoy these small steps? And answering that question quickly enough is important as well to maybe stop if you're not learning and not enjoying sooner rather than later. So learning the ropes, cultivating yourself, and enjoying the process of these small steps is probably some of the points that I would give the advice to my old self that is forgotten. Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me for this interview.